مكتب الصراف ورميح ممثلة بالأستاذ حسام عبد الله. مكتب الغنيم الحميضي الفهد ممثل بالسيد أحمد الحميضي. مكتب كليفورد شانس من لندن. مكتب وايت اند كيس والبدر اللي كانوا يمثلون البنوك في هذه الأزمة. ولكم أنتم صحافتنا الغالية على دعمكم للمؤسسات الوطنية وحرصكم على نقل الأخبار بموضوعية وحيادية بما يصب في خدمة المستثمرين ومصلحة الاقتصاد الوطني. كما أتقدم شخصيا بالشكر الجزيل إلى مجلس إدارة جلوبال، إلى نائب الرئيس السيد خالد الوزان، إلى أعضاء مجلس الإدارة الشيخ عبد الله جابر الصباح، السيد مرزوق ناصر الخرافي، مستر ألان سميث، وأيضا لا أنسى الرئيس التنفيذي لبيت الاستثمار العالمي السيد بدر السميط. وإليكم جميعا أخواني وأخواتي العاملين في جلوبال على وقوفهم ومؤازرتهم لشركتهم ولي شخصيا طوال هذه الفترة. فأنتم بحق الشمعة التي أضاءت الطريق أمامي. أنتم كنتم وقودي الذي دفعني لتخطي الأزمة بثبات، فالشكر كل الشكر لكم. ونهاية أود أن أؤكد للجميع أننا لن نحيد عن التزامنا، وأننا سنواصل العمل بجد لتخطي جميع التحديات دائما، وأننا نحرص على أن نكون شركة أقوى قادرة على خدمة عملائها ومساهميها بخبرة أكبر وأداء أفضل. شكرا.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with some pleasure but also a degree of relief that I'd like to congratulate Maha and her senior management team at Global for the signing of the restructuring documentation earlier today, because it has been an extremely complex and at times challenging process. When Global first ran into financial difficulties some 12 months ago, it was the first time that many in the region and internationally, I might add, had experienced such a situation. Since the first meeting back on the 21st December last year, there have of course been a number of other entities, not only within Kuwait, but also the wider GCC region, that have had no choice but to enter into similar discussions with their creditors, and of course Dubai World being the most recent of them. As has become painfully apparent, in the current economic climate, the concept of debt restructuring is not unique to the Middle East. However, what has distinguished Global from the many other restructurings that are currently ongoing within Kuwait and the wider GCC region is that from the outset Global made and adhered to three promises. These being firstly to maintain a proactive dialogue with its creditors, secondly to keep interest or its Sharia equivalent current, and finally to repay all creditors in full. No one can dispute that Global has, with the help of its advisors HSBC, lived up to all three of these promises. The restructuring agreement that was signed earlier today has resulted in no upfront haircut for the creditors and envisages that all creditors will be repaid in full over the 3-year term of the restructuring documentation. In addition, I believe that the process followed by Global and its advisors HSBC over the past 12 months has set a standard for others in the region facing a similar plight to follow. Key features of the process which Global has gone through over the past 12 months are a constant and constructive dialogue between Global, its advisors and the Creditors Steering Committee, regular creditors meetings to facilitate a free flow of information and two-way dialogue between all parties. That is actually of fundamental importance in these types of situations. And of equal importance is the equal treatment of all bank creditors through our 100% consensual restructuring. Turning to the restructuring itself, this presented many challenges over the past 12 months. Not only was this for many a debut restructuring, but there were also many local banking practices and nuances, perhaps unfamiliar to those outside of the region, that had to be addressed and overcome. Furthermore, ensuring that the restructuring took into account the requirements of both conventional and Islamic financiers was no easy task, when the premise is and was to ensure that all creditors are treated equally.
However, I'm pleased to say that we have eventually made it across the finishing line today, and as a result of the restructuring, Global's existing banking facilities will be converted, or have been converted, into circa 1.7 billion of multi-currency secured conventional Islamic and bilateral facilities, with terms largely based upon Global's previous syndicated facilities. Of course, a restructuring of this magnitude and complexity requires the cooperation and input of many parties, and therefore, before closing, I feel it is appropriate to pass on a few words of appreciation. Firstly, as Chair of the Creditor Steering Committee, I would personally like to thank the other banks that sat on the Steering Committee, namely Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, Bergen Bank, Liquidity Management House, Standard Bank and Standard Chartered Bank, for all their assistance and support throughout the process. I would also like to thank White & Case and Al Badr as lead legal counsel to the creditors, Clifford Chance and Assar as lead legal counsel to Global, and HSBC, particularly Neil Goldie Scott, John Peachy, Robbie Harris and Omar and Mahana as advisors to Global. There have been many individuals involved at Global throughout the past 12 months as we've worked through the restructuring. But on behalf of all involved, I would personally like to thank Maha, Sunny Bhatia and Naval Mullah Hussain. And most importantly of all, my thanks go to the 53 financial institutions from Asia, Europe and the region, without whose support and understanding over the past 53 weeks, the consensual restructuring which we have signed today would not have been possible. The Steering Committee itself is not only pleased with the successful outcome of the restructuring, but also is highly appreciative of the tremendous efforts Global and its advisors HSBC made to keep the process on track, albeit with a few minor derailments along the way. Global's professionalism and transparency throughout this process has been highly commendable and, as already stated, sets a precedent for other ongoing and future restructurings in Kuwait and the wider GCC region. Finally, on behalf of all the creditors, I would like to wish Global's management every success as they focus their efforts on driving forward the three core businesses, mainly asset management, brokerage and investment banking, as they seek to reconfirm Global's position as one of the region's premier investment banks and asset managers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for those kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to echo some of the comments that David has made. When I first arrived in this building almost exactly a year ago, I had the unhappy task of explaining to the creditors that Global was moving into a position of default and it was unable to repay its debts on the terms that it had previously agreed to. It was a shock to the creditors because this was the first such organisation to say that. I'm very happy and very proud here today to be able to say that this is the first company to have come out of this process and have come out of it with its head held high and should be very proud of what it has achieved. It is no mean achievement to have brought together 54 different creditors, including, as David has mentioned, Islamic finance, bilaterals, syndicated facilities, conventional finance, and derivatives, and address all of these in a consensual way and get an agreement going forward which preserves the interest payments on a current basis for all creditors and preserves capital for the creditors as well, with no haircuts. I'm not going to speak for long, but what I must do is pay tribute to the Global team who in this process have behaved impeccably, which has made the process so much easier to achieve. They have adhered to the concept of transparency and made it very obvious to everyone exactly